Apologies, I'm late. I had the major issue rather with my generator. I'm sure most of us are facing a kind of power problem currently. I'm hearing that there is a power national grid collapse, blah blah blah, something like that. So we've not had power for a long time, and the gen has been working well only for it to mess up today. So the mechanic just left a few minutes ago. We're able to do a few things. You guys can talk too, right? It's not only me that has to talk.
Yeah.
Okay. And obviously, it's been a while since we did this. Oh my God! Of course, there's been one reason or the other, but I'm not going to worry about all of that for now, right? We're not going to go back to why we were not here, why the assignment was due for more than a month, over a month, I think. Okay, I think about 3 weeks. It was due December 24, which is about 3 weeks ago, and I gave it 2 weeks before that, so practically a month, right? And I understand that loops is a bit challenging, and honestly, it's not necessarily the primary reason rather why I was not so forthcoming with the review class. It's mostly because I had the busy end of the year / beginning of the year. I still do, but I'm hoping that we can get back on track. And so obviously we can't finish all of the assignment today. So what I'm hoping is that we can do one each day. Like there are 5 assignments. So we'll start with Fibonacci. If our body can take some more, we'll do band matrix should have a day on its own. It's a bit complicated. So we can do Fibonacci first, then we'll do guessing game, because I noticed that virtually everybody understood Fibonacci. And that's very good, actually, very good. And then Fibonacci and maybe guessing game, depending on how today goes. So I'll just get started, all right? Please let me, Sheung and Obina. Some of you are the only ones that I'm sure your audio is working. I think Timmy might be facing some internet challenges, so I need to be sure that you are constantly with me. So if you feel like, just like how Obina is doing, interjecting once in a while, so I know that you are there. Talking to you, Sheung. Okay. Well, I'm not sure Sheung is with us at all. Anyway, let's not delay any further. So I think I've gone through most of your work. I think Timmy submitted the guessing game, but I've not had the time to go through it. So the idea is that I would rather not talk about anybody's personal work. I'll just go straight into getting it done. All right. So obviously this is everybody's code. It's everybody's code. I'll upload that as well. And I'll create my own folder, which I'll call what do I call it now? Solutions, I guess. So,
are you going to upload it?
Yeah, they'll all be uploaded. So this is mine, solutions. So the first one I want to do is the Fibonacci. Before I go on, did anybody have any challenge with Fibonacci? Is Fibonacci difficult?
It's straightforward.
I'm sorry?
Not really.
Okay, good. I guess that's the only one you did, yeah. I guess we'll just go straight. I'll just go straight into it. I'll probably give a few minutes to talk about other people's code. So before I start mine, let me look at other people's code. I did not expect anything less from Obina because we talked about this before. Right, Obina?
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't expect any challenge or any problem with this, right?
No.
All right. Sheon's code was also just as good. Sheon took a different route where he had a count and n of 10s. Then he was counting by 1 and then made us feel welcome in school by adding bye-bye, which is good as well.
Nice.
So does Sheon have any question?
No.
Was it challenging for you? Did you figure it out? Stuff like that?
At first it was because I got to one point, I don't know, I had to first check out Google to see how people were doing theirs, how Google did theirs. As I was not
Beautiful.
able to get mine.
Beautiful. And I can assure you that what you just did is something that you are going to keep doing as long as you do programming. Where you have to
Sorry?
check out that what you've done for this assignment is something that
Yes.
you're going to have to keep doing as long as you do programming. Where you check out other people's work to get an idea of what you're supposed to do. Now, you remember there were some times in the past when I would give tasks and I had to reference some of my code from before to be able to understand what I'm doing. So it's like that. You're not expected to learn everything at once. If you saw like I said, and I think I said this during the orientation, what's most important is that you can think through the problem. It's not necessarily that you can code the problem. If you can understand the process of your solution, then writing the code is minimal. So what that allows you to do is that when you go online and check other people's code, you can have an idea of what they're trying to say to give you a bit of an insight of what you're supposed to write it. Do you understand?
Yes.
Good. So I wouldn't want to waste. I think Timmy did pretty okay as well. And as usual, he had his whole validation, make sure that you enter a positivity to that thing, which is good. It's not necessary, but it's good. Then he had print F1. I think this was a bit too much. If you notice, his code entered 32 lines, and if you see other people's code, you see 25. I think would be nice. That's because Shehu had a lot of white line in between his own. If you remove all the white line, he probably entered 20. Obinaz was at 14. And that's including 2 white lines. So you can write this in like 10 lines. So I mean, his was okay, but ultimately it was a much more longer round. And if you're writing a code for a server, this is definitely not advised. You can write a task in, okay, you had some comments. Okay, let's disregard 5 lines of comment. If you can write the code in 2 lines, don't bother writing it in 5 lines. In some situation, it's not important that write it in 30 lines. When you start in the beginning, sure, you're allowed to be very expressive. But then as you go on with more experience, you realize that, okay, the shorter your code, the better. All right. So, and I've said this before in this place, that there's always a trade-off between writing shorter code and making it understandable. Obina's code, very short, very understandable. It is the perfect. I mean, I'm sure if I were to write, if maybe a more experienced Python programmer, you probably write it in 10 lines. But then only people that are experienced as him that will understand it, right? But if you give this to anybody, they understand what they're doing. I'm sure all of you get access to this, so and try to understand what I'm doing. So I wouldn't want to write any code for Fibonacci. Everybody has an idea, but just so you feel all righteousness, impute int enter the number of times like that, and then call that. Let's say what do we call it now? Int 10. I think somebody used int. I think that was Timmy. Yeah, yeah, it was a good variable name choice. So end time, then we say let's say a is equals to 1. No, better will be n is equals to 0. N is equals to 1. And I simply say for I. Okay. You guys used while loop. Everybody used while loop, which is not bad. Let me use the while loop.
I think you should use the for. Let's have something different.
Okay. The for loop it is. So I go for. You guys can still hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I go for I in range n to m. So we're going from I to the n term. So obviously we already have the first 2 terms. That means that we're not starting from 0, we're starting from 2. And we want to say that, okay, let's print out n1 and n2, obviously, before we begin. Print n1, print n2. Then the next value, n2. So let me call it n3 will be n1 plus n2. Makes sense, right? And we'll print the value of n3. That will be the next term. So by the time you're going back to the loop, right? the next value, we have to first set the value of, the next two values will be, sorry, I think I'm mixing something up here. 1 minute, please. Let me just wrap my head around that. Okay, let's do like this. The next term will always be N1 and N2. Let's do like that. The next term will always be N1 and N2. But then, for each iterations, right? For each iterations, so we're going to have N1 and N2. But then the value of N1 and N2 will always change after you sum it up. So for instance, now, this is a new thing, right? But then the value of N2, yeah, N2, value of N1 now becomes N2. And value of N2 becomes N3. So the value of N1 now becomes the previous last number, and the value of N2 becomes the new number you got from the addition. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
So that should actually, that's pretty straightforward. But I'm trying to write the code so that I don't have to use multiple. I don't want to use this variable, but I don't think there's a way around that. And so
You want to reach?
I want to see how I can write the code without introducing it. We have to introduce a new variable N3 here. I'm trying to see if it's a way to write the code without introducing a new variable, but I think that would just make it very complicated. Everybody needed some kind of new variable. So let's just leave it that way. Let's not go too far. And so what happens is that when you run your code, right? When you run your code, it says enter the number of terms. Let's see the first 5 terms. Voila, it worked. If you want to put everything on the same line, then I'm sure most of you already know this. Maybe not most of you, but at least Obi know. So when you have this comma, this argument, n is equals to quotation mark, I can do space, comma space. What that's basically saying is that when you type, why are you doing this right now? When you type, when you print out the value of this thing, end it with comma and space. By default, what you're ending with, if you don't put anything there, by default, it is a new line. So that's what happens, that when you print out something, it automatically goes to the next line. But if you want to change that, you have to do end is equals to, so if in this case, I want to put comma and space, what that does is that by the time you print N1, it puts a comma and space before doing the next thing, and on and on. So it will make sense by the time I run the code now. Let me just show you how that looks like. So when I run that, and I write 5, you see that, right? 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, put it on a line. Did you guys understand that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Good. So that's actually quite important because we're going to use that for band matrix for when that time comes. So we have our code that works fine. Any questions before I go on?
No.
Awesome. Okay, so moving on. Next one. I said we'll do band matrix later. Let's look at guessing game. Guessing game is a tricky one because I came up with it myself. And I'm proud of it. So it's a question I've always had. No, it's not a question. It's a question I've always formulated from like year 2 when I started learning programming. I was like, okay, this is something I'd like to try. And from then it became a signature question that I come up with. So the trick or the key to solving this problem is actually understanding the task. I agree that this particular question that was vague because, like I said, this one I came up with myself. I've not had a lot of time to refine it so that it's very clear for people. So it's why I said at the end I will attach a video to explain, but I don't think I ever did that. I apologize for that. So I understand that this might be challenging because, like I said, I never actually explained it, and because it's a question I came up with myself, and God knows I don't have a lot of experience. The clearness can be put into question. So the good thing now is that because
take that back. You don't have a lot of experience. Is that what you said?
I don't have a lot of experience setting questions.
Oh, okay.
I have experience programming, sure. But then when you want to set questions, those are different ballgame. If you check out Lead Code and Code, you see the way the questions are structured. Those are people that do it for a living. So they know how to structure it, so you don't have any reason to say, I did not understand. Right. So I'm going to run through this and explain it. It says the objective of this assignment is develop a simple guessing game using all the programming concepts you've learned so far. Basically, addition, subtractions, conditions, variable names, and all that, casting and the rest. Now, these are the most important things. The game is made up of infinite rounds. So it's basically like, which I'll use that compare now. You guys know Temple Run now, right?
Yeah.
Temple Run is basically a game that continues infinitely. What that means is that when you play one, even if you lose, you can decide to play again. It's infinite. It's only, if you decide that you want to stop, just close the game. But then you can continue. I don't know if that makes sense. There's no fixed number of times you can play it. Unlike when you buy a Nokia phone and they say to play a snake game, you have to pay 200 now. But then you have 5 free games. What happens there is that you only have 5 rounds. After you play the 5 rounds, it blocks you until you pay 200 and then makes it infinite. Does that make sense? I'm trying to explain the meaning of the word infinite there. It doesn't particularly hold a lot of weight. It's just trying to explain that the user can decide to play again after one round is done, play again after one round is done, can decide to end the game, whichever case, blah, blah, blah. Any questions before I move on?
No.
Good. Now, let me write something here. Game is made up of what? Infinite rounds, right? Now it says, I'm just going to put this by the side, so we have it side by side. It says, in each round, your script should have a number, random number that the user will guess. Now, this is one different. Now, in each round, right? In each round, you have a random number user is to guess. Does that make sense? So I'm trying to put indentation so that to make sense. This is like the game. The game is the big one, is the master. Inside the game, you have infinite rounds. Inside each round, rather, you have a random number that the user is to guess, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense? It doesn't.
Random number user. Yes.
Okay, 1 minute. Let me grab my. I'm not sure. I didn't check it. I'm not sure it's gone. 1 minute. Just stay on the line, please. Doctor. Okay. I don't try to charge you. No work. Not my fault. Give me a note. I charge that good day. What the doing is all right. I grabbed my bamboo folio thing. You guys are there, right?
Yeah.
I grabbed my bamboo folio stuff, so it's easier for me to write things down. Come on now. Okay. Please say test into the microphone. Everyone, please say test into the microphone.
Test.
Again, please.
Test.
All right, good. My microphone is shaking, so I just want to make sure that was good. Now, when I go to test, dead. Fuck is dead. Fucking bastard is dead. Fuck. Well, the outcome is dead, which means this is not an option anymore. Try to explain it anyway. We have a game that is made up of rounds, right? Each round you have a number to guess, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense now?
Yeah.
So all I did was just put it on a new line and then put a tab in front, so it's easier for me to, because round will have more stuff inside. So each round you have a number to guess, and it says the user will guess a number of times. You can specify that number. So let's say I want my user to guess 3 times. He gets the first time, he gets the third time. So here I'll say user guesses 3 times, right? It says on each guess, compare the code with compare the user input to the random number. On each guess, compare user, does user win? Let me just do like that. The user win. If the user has won, then if user gets right, user wins round. Something like that. So what I've done here is not necessarily an algorithm, it's just me trying to outlay something. Now, if you noticed, first of all, just by looking at this, you notice that there are two, there's the game, and there's the round, and there's now another sub-process. There's a game that's consisted of round, and that's one process. And in each round, there's another sub-process where the user guesses and all that, right?
Mm-hmm.
What that immediately tells you is that you have 2 for loops, or 2 loops at least. I'll show you what I mean. So what I want to do is I want to take this thing simply. I want to first try to write a game for 1 round. I don't want to care about the infinite. Let me first get 1 round, then I will now try to extend it to infinite. So I'm starting with the smaller process, and I'll now try to extend it to infinite. You guys understand that, or should I say it again?
I get it.
Shane, what about you?
Understand.
Okay, great. So, if I were to model the round, what it says is that the first thing you want to do is generate a random number for user to guess, right? That's the first thing you want to do. Then the next thing you want to do is ask the user to guess a number. Now, the next thing you want to do is if user guesses, no. So what is the, okay, ask the user to guess, before you ask the user to guess a number, remember that the user asked 3 times. Okay, you know what? Hold on. Follow me. Just pardon me, please. Ask the user to guess a number, yes. If the user guesses well, guess is correct. Guess is correct. User wins round. If not, go back to step 2. So I'm just going to do something here. Step 2. Sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4. So the first thing you want to do is generate a random number. Then you want to ask the user to guess the number. And instead, if user guess is correct, user wins a round. If not, go back to step 2. This makes sense for that simple round. Are you guys with me?
Yeah.
Now, first of all, let's look at the first one. How do you get the user how do you generate a random number? I think I wrote that there. I didn't. Shit, I didn't. Of course. Oh, right. I'm sorry about that again. To generate a random number.
What
did you say?
It was supposed to give us a random number.
No, I was supposed to teach you how to generate a random number. It's what we should have had during the Q&A session. I don't think we ever had this. You're supposed to ask me, how do you generate a random number? And I will show you how. I just realized that I didn't. I don't know how I forgot. So how you generate a number is, first of all, there's a class in Python that allows you to deal with random numbers and all, or randomness generally. You have to import
rand.
Yeah, import random actually, right? So just like when you're doing maths.power, you have to import math at the top. What we're doing here is import random because we're going to need it to generate a random number. Now, if you've done a quick Google search, you can say random. If you do a quick Google search on how to generate random numbers, you see that the way to do that is by doing, let me say, guess. No, what do I call it now? Let me call it targets. Let me call it targets. Because that's the number we're trying to target to. You write random dot rand range. So basically what it's saying is that you give it two numbers and to generate a random number between those two numbers. So I put 0 and 9, and to generate all the random numbers.
Sorry to drag you back. I did two. This is like a function, right? This random. Yes. Well, what I saw was random dot rand int.
What random
two
dot rand
arguments.
It's what that does is that it generates an integer.
So this one, what does this one do?
Well, I'll find out. Random dot rand int.
Yes, it does.
09 rand range. Same thing. It does the same thing. Well, I'm sure they will have something different about them, but primarily they can both be used for what we're trying to do. Sheung, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm following.
You're following, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so just so that we use what everyone's using, let's call it rand 8, right? So it generates a random number between 0 and 9. So we've done that here. My keyboard is not happy with me tonight. Generate random numbers for users to guess. That's tag. Okay, Sean needs a minute. Okay, let's just give him a minute. Sean, are you back?
Yes, I'm back.
Okay, so that's the target, right? The number that we want the user to guess. Now, the next thing is we want to ask the user to guess a number. What you do that is simply, as usual, guess a number. Convert it to an integer, obviously, since you'll be doing a lot of comparing, and then you can call that guess. Straight up, right? Come on now. Oh, Jesus. If the user guess is correct, the user wins the round. If not, go back to step 2. Now, when you see something like this that says go back, automatically know that you're using a loop. When you get this sense of you have to repeat a process, automatically know that you're using a loop. Now, what it says is that you have to go back to step 2. What that means is that from year to year is a loop. And to make sense when I write the loop finish. So for boilerplate loop, let me just call right while true. I'm going to change the condition.
Can you use for loop here?
You can use a for loop, but I'll get to that. For now, I want to use a boilerplate loop syntax. I'm not trying to explain the loop yet. I'm just trying to show that okay, there's a loop. Whether it's while or it's a for loop, I will edit that later. For now, I'm just trying to show you that this is a loop here inside this indentation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So it says if the user guess is correct, user wins round. So basically what you're saying is that if guess is equal to target, now how do you win this round? Remember, this loop is basically going to run. It says go back to step 2. So that means this loop is going to be running every time the user doesn't get the guess right. So the moment it guesses the guess right, which is this, what we're going to do is that we're going to break out of that loop. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So,
yes, yes.
Good. Now, if the person is not correct, there's no need to write else, right? There's no need to do that. Well, you can do else and then write something like print, sorry, wrong guess. Something like that. You can do this, right? Say, sorry, wrong guess. What automatically happens is that the computer will immediately go back to the loop and then ask the user to guess a number again. If the user guess is not correct again, it says, sorry, wrong guess, goes back again to the top, asks the user, and then keeps going. Remember, this is an endless loop because I put while true. As long as this is true, it's going to keep running. So let's just try. Let's see what that looks like. By the time I run, let me play this first. By the time I run this, I said 0, guess a number. Sorry, wrong guess 1. Sorry, wrong guess 2, 3. I'm sure it's going to be a number between 0 and 9, 8 and 9.
But wait, that means you must have. Okay, you'll probably put a number that is the correct number, because right now almost all the numbers from 0 to 9
except 9. 9 is the correct number. If you notice, it didn't say sorry, wrong guess. It broke after I repeated 9. And if you check here, I said the target should generate a random number between 0 and 9. So even you as a programmer, unless you write print, random number is this. Unless you say target is equal to the string target. Unless you write this and run your code, you yourself will never know what the number is.
Okay.
You understand? It's different from me saying target is equals to 8. That's a different ballgame. This one is totally up to the computer. So you can use this as a kind of a debug, right? Just for you to make sure that your code works. Maybe you want to test. I want to test, okay, if the number is 9 and I do this, that's for testing purposes only. If you're not going to release this to somebody, you obviously have to get rid of this, obviously, right?
Yeah.
So there was a time what I always do is that for any message that was only for me, I'll just put the bug in front like this. So whenever I'm running my code, I know that if I see the bug in front, I know that whoever the user is going to be, I need to get rid of this by the time I'm sending it to the person that's going to use it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. So it's just the way I do my thing. In fact, it's the way I used to do my thing. I don't do it anymore. Most of the time, I just use print. At the end of the day, when I'm now cleaning up the code, I get rid of all the prints. Because most of the time, the user doesn't want to see their inputs and their output. They don't care what goes on in the system. They don't want to see anything. Just let me give you this and you give me that. So I ditched that system a long time ago. So back to what we're doing, right? We've said that the loop is going to run continuously. The user is going to guess a number. If the guess is equal to target, then to break out the loop. If not, it will say, sorry, wrong guess. You can do another thing. Try again. And then it goes back to the top. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I can now say, but now the problem about this is that, remember, we said that the user can only guess a number of times. In my case, I want to use 3. I only guess 3 times. Now, obviously, you that are writing the program, you have to be smart about it. You cannot say that the user will have 10 trials when you can only guess a number between 0 and 9. Obviously, all you need to do is just keep trying 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 until you get it right. If you have 10 trials and you have 9, if you have 10 trials and you only have 9 possible values, then you obviously pass every time. But say you have 9 possible values and you have 3 trials, then that makes it a little more difficult. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Somebody said they are sleeping just now.
No, I said excuse me.
Okay, God bless you. Oh, yeah, excuse. Okay, so now the next part we now need to do is prevent our code from running continuously. Now, one of the things I liked about everybody's code, especially Shion and Simi's code, when it came to Fibonacci, was the use of something called count. And basically, that's what they use to keep track of how many times their loop has run. And that's perfect. And so I'm going to build on that. I'll just have something called, let me say, trials. I'll call that initially 3, right? And then every time the user guesses a number, I reduce my trials by 1. Does that make sense? Are you with me?
Yeah.
So my while loop condition will now be, as long as the trials is not equal to 0, keep guessing the number. But remember, every time you guess a number, your trial reduces by 1. After 3 guesses, ideally, your trial should be back to 0. So that when the loop goes back up and it sees that trial is equal to 0, it breaks out of this loop and says at the end, print, end of round. Does that make sense?
Okay.
You want me to explain that again?
It does. Yeah.
Huh?
It makes sense.
How about Obina? Obina is hopefully quiet.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah.
Okay, but you get it, right?
Yes.
Good. Now let's run our code. Now, this is the tricky part. Even though I've explained this part and I expect it to work, I can almost guarantee that there's going to be a problem. I'll explain why in a bit. So yeah, you can see that it says the target is 0. I'm going to deliberately miss it 3 times. So I'm going to write 9 the first time, write 3 the second time, write 1 the third time. Perfect, it works. It says the first time I guess the first one, next time I guess the next one, next time I guess the next one, and it says wrong, end of round. Does that make sense? 3 trials,
Yes.
end of
Yeah,
round.
yeah. But according to the question, it said because the player has infinite rounds.
Beautiful.
You can play more than 1, 2, 3 thinking. But now you're
Beautiful.
ending it at 3.
No, now that's why this is, like I said, it's imperative that you understand the question. What I'm ending at 3 is not the number of rounds. What I'm ending at 3 is the number of trials. If you see the second condition, or the third one rather, it says, which one is it again? Oh yeah, in each round, your screen should have a random number the user will guess a number of times. In my case, it is 3, right?
Okay.
And that's what I call trials. So what I'm ending here is the number of trials, which is essentially, so let me explain. A game is made up of multiple rounds, and the round is made up of multiple trials. That's what I was trying to do the whole this thing here earlier.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So
Yeah.
this is round beginning round. How do I say start of round rather. Start of round. This is the code for 1 round. Everything we've written so far is good for 1 round. But now our game is made up of multiple rounds. What that means is that, and this is the tricky part.
Round 1, round 2, round 3 thinking.
Beautiful. It means that the round is a repeated process. Simply like I've said about a repeated process, you enclose that part in a loop. So I'm just going to temporarily put this boilerplate here, round through. Enclose that part in a loop. So what happens is that by the time this round has ended, it automatically goes back again and starts a new round. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes.
Are you sure? Somebody is out. Okay. Are you sure?
It does.
Sure, and Obina, I need to confirm that you get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good. Again, it will work, obviously. Let's test that. In this case, the target is 2. You see, it says start of new round. Target is 2. Let's get a number 095. End of round. See again, start of new round. Target is 3 this time. 4, 5, 6. End of round, start of new round. Target is 8. So let's try putting 8 in fact. Boom. Do you see that? It ended that round. Okay, let's put a congratulatory message here that says, yay, you got it right. Plus 1 point, I guess. Let's just put that there for play. So that's just to make sure that, because in this case, when I got the number right, there was no indication to show that I actually got it. So do you guys understand that, or am I just speaking Germans?
No, it's perfect.
Okay, now if you notice, the challenge we had was, again, our code is going to be running continuously. And that's not bad, because our program was supposed to run infinite rounds. But then you want to give the user the option of saying, play a new game. That's the ideal thing to do. So at the end of each round, what you can say is print. Do you want to play again? Let's not put it to like new game, Y or N, something like that. And then you can put defaults. But now there's a way they usually do this command line thing. But now they put it. Okay, yeah, Y, N. So if you use okay, no, very soon you guys are going to become more like crazy house programmer, and then you're going to have to be doing some crazy house what do you call it now? C command line command. I want to show you something real quick. Wait. No, let me mess up the code. No. Trying to find something I can use to explain this thing just real quick before I move on. Okay, no, CD make directory tests. CD tests. Oops. If it is not found, of course it's not found. I forgot. Click install. Hit this here like this. Now, come on. I know what, screw that shit. So what I'm just trying to say is that in many command lines, when you get to a point where you start dealing with installing packages, you know, now you have to you go online, you say, I'm looking for Microsoft Windows. You download the software, you install it, you press button, you press your mouse, it work. Well, for programming, many of the solutions you need, you can't just download them and install. You have to go to your command line and then type some foolish code. Now, what I'm trying to say is that there's a whole language, there's a whole convention on how things are run on the command line. And one of the things that is done is that when you want a user to enter an input, you want him to see that, okay, there are two options here, Y and N. But then you also want him to realize that even if it doesn't have an answer anything, by default, the one that is in capital is what will be accepted. I'm just teaching you something. This is not program. This is just something you will learn over time. What I'm doing here is I'm telling whoever that runs this program is that yes or no. But even if you don't put anything and just press enter or you put an invalid value, what I'm going to automatically take is that you want to play a new game. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yes.
Good. So
you say if it's not a code, then what is it?
It's not code per se. Like it's not really code. It's more like convention. Think of it like let me see. When you go and fill a form online, and there's a default. Okay, for instance, I don't fill a form, and then the country, there's a convention. Some forms you go to online, and then in the country you have to first. It's not filled. It's blank. You have to go down and then select your country. Some, however, automatically select Nigeria. Right? It's just a convention on how you do things. Because there's programming, so you will learn over time when you start to write programs. Like you don't write program for yourself, you write program for people. So you need to find, and I told you about user experience before. This is basically just user experience, how your user will communicate to your program. You don't want them to start stressing, start looking for Nigeria up and down. So if there's a way for you to automatically detect what country they are in, and then just automatically fill it then, but then it's not hard and fast. The person can still say, okay, even though you put Nigeria, I don't put Nigeria, I want to use United States. It's just a user experience to make life easy. So in this case, even though the user, we are making it clear to the user that you have to put either Y or N. But even if you put something stupid, I automatically assume that it's Y. Many programmers, just take this to any programmer, they understand it very well. Especially the ones that work with command line interface, they understand it well. Does that make sense? So it's not Python programming per se, it's just how things are done when it comes to command line. You know that we're running this program in a command line, right? Visual Studio is just making it look fancy. Ideally, let me show you what I mean. Ideally, let me put an input at the end so it doesn't just jump out. Let me put okay, no, it doesn't jump out. When you run your code, let me go to it. You double tap it, the command line pops up. This is it. This is how it works.
Whoa. I don't get it. How did you get to this command line now?
So whenever you want to edit your Python code, you right click and go to edit with idle, and then you open it in idle, right? Now, the reason why you do that is because you are the programmer. You have to type code, you want to write some code, you want to test back and forth. A user that is running your code does not give a shit about world and all that shit, right? So you can package your program in a way called an executable that when you double click, a kind of version of your program is available. So you can see that what you wrote here is now available here. So you can send this to anybody and say, okay, guys, I created a game with command prompt, just double tap this support. Well, there are still some other things to explain, I'll explain that later. And then you can play the same game here. Same game here. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Right.
It's just
so all you need to do is to go to your file and double click.
Yeah, basically open. If you have Python installed, Python will open it with called Python shell. And that Python shell is a command line. That's what I'm trying to say. And the goal of everything I've been saying is that people that work with command line, imagine you give this solution to a programmer. Immediately they see, they know what y comma n knows. What if you give it to a user that is not necessarily a programmer but is very familiar with command line, when he sees that, he knows what it means. You understand? Yeah. You can decide to make it, different. You can decide to start putting instruction one by one. Either case, as long as the user understands, that's the cocoa. So, we said, what the fuck? Okay, we said I'm going to make this input. I'm going to just close this. I'm not sure what's going to do now. I'm going to make this input. I get the user's input. I'll just call that response. Now, like I said, if the user puts in, all I'm concerned with is if the user puts in n, based on the format I'm following here. Unless the user puts in n, I don't give a shit about anything. Because if you put in capital letter Y, or you put in any other thing, like I said, by default, as long as, if you by default, your answer has to be between Y and N. And if you put anything aside that, I will automatically choose Y. So what that means is that the only thing we're concerned about, if you say, okay, if response is equals to, yes, you do something, and just put pass there. I say if response, sorry, else if response is equals to N, you do something, let me just put that's there. Now, else is in the event that the person puts any other thing aside Y or N, it does something else. Now, if you notice, these two, remember, like I said, if you put any other thing and you put Y, they will run the same thing, right? Are you with me?
Yes.
You guys are lost, aren't you?
So if response is equals to Y, pass. Else, response
pass
is
is just
zero pass.
No, it's a template code. It's like you can do some other things. I'm just putting it as temporary. You can just put other things there. I don't want to have start writing code, different things. I just put pass there because pass is the only thing I can think of that is short. I won't cause an error. So what I'm just saying is that ideally, remember I said, even if you put any other thing, it will run the same thing as Y, right? So technically, these two are going to be the same condition. Else if response equals to Y and else. The only thing I'm particularly consider that is going to be unique is when the response is N. And the reason is because it's only when the response is N that we're going to break out of this loop. It's only when the response is no, I don't want to play a new game, that we're going to break out of the loop. Any other response the person gives does not matter to us. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So I'm just going to, it's unnecessary to do all this. I just simply say, if the response says N, then break out the loop. You can say something like break out, yes. And then at the end of the game, you say print, thanks for playing. At the beginning, you can say print, welcome to my game, to my guessing game. And ask them to even enter their username. And go like input, enter a player name, not even a username, a player name. And then we call this player name. Yeah. Yeah, enter a player name. Then you can now maybe put a few instructions here. I say put a few, I'm just trying to make it fancy. Few instructions here, right? Maybe the rules of the games are these, blah, 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 blah. Put multiple instructions like that. So you can say instruction, who's at the door? Say 1 minute, please. Who's at the door? Ah. Are you guys with me?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. So you can say something like instruction 1, instruction 2, blah, blah, blah. And then after your caramel and your introduction and everything, you can now say input or input, press enter to continue. and then the user just press anything or press enter. As long as you press enter, blah, the game starts. Now, do you get that?
Yeah.
You get what I just did?
Yes, yes.
So you can put new lines. Remember, /n is a new line. So anywhere you want to, when I ran my code, you notice that everything was just jumbled together. So that crash. Everything was just jumbled together. So remember to just put /n when you want to make things fancy. So for instance, after the person presses enter and say /n to create a new line, at the beginning of each round, I can put at the end of each round, I can put a new line like this. Just put it everywhere. So at the end of each round, person like new line. I think that should work. The new game, the person enters a value. And then at the beginning of each round, also a new line. Just make it look simple and clear, I guess. That where you put your new line is up to you. So also, if you don't want to use new line, you can just use a simple empty bracket of print. That's all. That will do the same thing. If that will make you feel more confident about your code, then you can do that as well. It just makes your code longer because you're adding extra lines of code. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So one other thing I wanted to do now is this. Good. So when I run my code now, let's run our code before we get lost. Looks like this guy has crashed. Oh shit, many things are running. Okay, let's run that again. It's taking a minute. Okay, good. It says, welcome to my guessing game. Enter a player name, Josh. Blah, blah, blah. Instructions, presenter to continue. 1. Start a new round. The target is 4. I say 8. I say 9. I say 1. End of round. Sorry. Blah, blah, blah. I says, do you want a new game? Now, even if I don't press anything, it automatically takes me to a new game. Put another new number. Da, da, da. End of round. No, shit. I lost again. I play a new one. Yes. I guess a number. Now, this time, let me get it right. I get it right. I say, yeah, you got it right. Plus 1 point. End of round. New game. Now, this time, I don't play anymore. And I say, end. Thanks for playing. Does that make sense?
Okay.
You guys are quiet. Did I confuse you?
No, I said it makes sense.
Is Obina there? Okay, Obina is not there. Good. So that is exactly the minimum requirement of the code. Okay,
Can you
so
go back to that code again?
What? Oh yeah.
Can you go back to what you just used now? Okay, thanks.
You're welcome. Now, this is actually the minimum requirement of the code. However, if you want to make it fancy, if you want to make it crazy, say you can maybe make it you can personalize it by adding the player's name in a few places. I say player 1. Okay, you can say at this point, player guess a number. So every time you say guess a number, you mention the player's name. So just to make sure that the player feels like, oh, this guy remembers my name, that kind of vibe. It's just adding a few touches. However, one other touch that would have that I say would play a very good role is specifying the round number. So one of the things that makes it boring fast is the fact that I'm just playing around. I'm not even sure what round I am anymore. Imagine I keep playing this and I'm playing numbers. Sorry, let me put my name, blah, blah. I'm playing numbers. It gets really bulky. At some point, I don't even know where I am anymore. I just know I'm in a new round. What would be nice is if I know what round I am. And just like you do with your Fibonacci series, I can just put round number at the top and call that 0. So at the beginning of each round, I increase my round number by 1. By 1. Are you with me? Okay, actually, yeah, by 1. And then I say start of round. Instead of starting new round, I say start of round plus the round number. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Are you sure? You don't seem very convinced. Obina, for fuck's sake, you there?
Start of round 1. It makes sense.
Okay, Sheung, is it clear to you?
Yeah.
Good. So now when you run your code, You can now see the round number. It says, welcome to prison game, blah, blah, blah. Let's continue. Start of round 1, 2, 1, 5. New game, yes. Start of round 2. Sorry, I entered a letter instead of a number. That's why this error is there. But don't worry about that. We'll talk about that when we start doing error handling and all that. But you get what I did about the round number thing, right?
Yes.
So another thing, finally, another thing that you can add is to add a score. You can add points. And then for every time the user guesses a correct number, you add 1 point. Remember, I already said 1 point here, so it's kind of, I'm giving it away. I just say points. So every time they get the number correctly, they get 1 point. So at the end of the day, you can say print, then you say scoreboard below. And then you say print, just put, this is me just trying to make it look nice, so nothing more. It's not like it's compulsory to do the same thing, it's just me trying to make it look nice.
What's the line for?
The line is just to show you demarcation.
Okay.
Just show you demarcation on my, when I'm printing it out. You can also do underscore, underscore. Underscore, underscore is better because it makes it look like a whole underline. Whichever works your boat sharp. So I can say player name. So I do player name. Yes, it's a number of rounds. Sorry, it's just, I'm used to doing it like this. It makes it easier for me, but I know you guys don't understand. So just screw it there. Player name is this. I'll say number of rounds is round number. Remember, after each loop, the round number is increased. So by the time of the end of the loop, we know exactly how many rounds the user has played. And then we can say total points equals to points. Does that make sense? Huh?
Yes, it does.
So by the time I run my code, you want to see me run it?
I wanted to see, like, when you run the code, how it comes, the outcome.
All right, just give me a minute. Let me, I think, okay. Enter player number name, Josh. Blah, blah, blah. Guess a number, 4, 2, 3. Nope. 2, 2, 2. Target is 4, okay. 4. Yeah, you got that right. Let's play another one. 2. Got that right. Let's play another one. 0, 0, 0. Let's play another one. 1, 2, 3. Let's play another one. Get this one right. You remember we've only scored 1 point, right? I mean 2 points, I think. So now let's get this one. So we'll make that 3. So when we say no, player name Josh, number of round 6, total points 3. You see that?
Okay.
So that's just, if you had done this, so if you had done what I showed you before, that would be meeting the minimum requirement. But if you have added this extra, that will now be creative touch. Then you can also say that after the user guesses the number right, you can just show them how many points they have at the moment. It's just something extra. So all I'm just doing is just trying to make it, because this is very personal. This is not like the other assignments where you're just doing mathematics and stuff. This is something that is almost like you're making a solution for a person. You understand? Yeah. All the assignments I've given you, they're usually just mathematical, nothing really important. I think except the DMI calculator and all that. So when you get a chance to write an application that a person can potentially use, what you try to do is you try to make it as entertaining to the person as possible. Since this is a game, you have a lot of options. So what you would do is now, okay, so for instance, in year 2, what I can do with this is that when I wrote this, I can take the rest of the semester and just start making this code bigger and bigger and bigger. Right now it's at 50. I think I wrote one. I wrote a simple game in the first week. By the end of the semester, it had increased like by 10 because I kept getting ideas and I was just implementing. That will kind of help you solidify your knowledge. You understand? And then at the end of the day, you can have something that say, okay, I actually built this myself. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So you can say, one of the things you can do here is now, okay, this, for instance, you can have an idea and say, okay, multiplayer games, and then you can have multiple player select, can do online, you can do different things, just be creative. But whenever what is important, especially with program, is when you find an idea, hold on to that idea and then keep following, especially for beginners, just keep pulling that thread to lead you to a lot of worlds that you don't think are there. And then you realize just how good you are, or how good you become, rather. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Zubina even with us. Obina. Hello. Yeah, I don't think he's. So we'll stop our guessing game. Tomorrow we'll do band matrix. Ideally, band matrix is tricky. I think we might need to spend the entire day doing band matrix alone. And on Wednesday we'll do random walkers. Luckily, two of them are kind of related. So if we can successfully do random walkers, we'll be able to do random walker extended in like the next 5 minutes. So that said, I wanted to. Are there any questions before I go?
Question for you.
Awesome. So one thing I wanted to point out is that, remember when I said that the explanation of this particular task was not very clear. Like I said it before, it's not very clear. Now, if you start to work in a programming firm, you will likely run into the kind of problems a lot where the requirements of what you're supposed to do is not clear. In a proper, ideal programming firm, you have project managers, product managers, blah, 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 product analysts, business requirement analysts, system, and all those people that will shall do. Their whole job is to make sure that by the time it gets to you, it is clear what exactly you are supposed to do. Okay. But then, unfortunately, many companies are not ideal. So what happens is that when you get to a company and I really hope that you get a job in the future, you are going to have to learn how to ask questions a lot. This is not clear. This is not clear. This is not clear. You're going to write some part of a code. You're going to give your boss. He's going to tell you that this is what I actually wanted there. And then there'll be a lot of back and forth. This is the kind of situation you expect because, like I said, this is the closest you'll come to so far, this is the closest we've come to actually creating something that we can say, okay, I developed this. Try and play my game. You know, that kind of vibe. If you actually write a code, if you have any code that you want your friends to try out on their computer, you can send me the code. I'll help you put it in a kind of an executable rather, and they will just send. I'll send it to you, send it to them, and then they can play it on their computers, right? So this is the closest you come to creating a solution for a user. And then what I'm trying to point out is that you see how tricky, how complex, how you have to break things down a lot. This evolved. That's basically how you would be doing when you're writing solutions for people. You need to break things down a lot. And that is like 80% of programming. Unless you break things down, you will not make progress. No offense, I don't mean that as a curse. You understand?
Okay. Okay.
So it is very important. Was that Timmy's voice I just heard?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
It is very important that you know how to break things down. I'm hoping that in the future, because so one of the things I found out recently is that Google has they started I remember back in school we used to go for all these coding competitions back then. So Ash Code, Kickstart rather, is what people like your level will be doing, beginners. And what I would do, is that Kickstart or Code Jam? I'm not sure. But essentially, when it's time, they have not started yet. Registration is starting in February. I'm hoping that you guys can participate in this. What you should do is that you need to increase your confidence level, blah, blah, blah. But most of those questions require that you learn everything that we have to do here first, and maybe a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that's my goal, sharp. The year started. I'm hoping that we'll take this more seriously. Hopefully tomorrow we can get into band matrix. You guys should be prepared for that tomorrow because band matrix, even I am scared of it. Let me just give you an inside scoop. I got this particular task from Stanford. Like Stanford, Princeton rather. They have an online school in Coursera. I registered there, and that's where I got the task from. And it was a doozy for me. So I can imagine it's difficult for you as well. But the idea is that we're going to work with it together. I was actually hoping that some of you will try, which one person did. I think I was hoping that some of you will try and show something. Again, no judgment, obviously. We'll go through it together tomorrow. But prepare your mind, you might have to stay a bit long. Cool.
You.
All right. Thanks. Thanks for coming. Are there any more questions before I round off? All right. I don't know why Obina has been suddenly quiet. Obina, are you still with us? Yeah, probably. Well, I hope you get access to the recording anyway. All right, guys. Take care of yourself. Have a good night.
All right, good night.